Okay, so now we are talking about getting mounted from side control. Obviously, we can mount from all sorts of configuration. We can mount straight off of a guard pass. We can mount straight off half guard chest to chest, of leg riding. There are many situations in which we can go straight from the legs to mount. But for now, let's just talk about side control, which is probably the single most common transition to mount. So understand that when we talk about side control, the legs are usually outside of the picture because I am fully past the legs, so I don't need to worry about that. The thing I need to worry about is my partner's elbows and ends. So the biggest mistake that everyone makes, especially beginners level, when it comes to get mounted from side control is mounting when my partner has an inside elbow on the near side. Okay, we always distinguish a near side to a far side. So near side is the side where my body is, far side is the opposite side of where my body is. This is very important. So if I go to mount and my partner has an inside elbow on the near side, this will never work for many different reasons. He can literally just use this to convey the power of the bridge. I go to mount, and he bridges, use this to bridge, and everything falls apart. Or if you're dealing with a more technical opponent, he can keep the inside elbow position. Remember what we talked about, the inside elbow position. He can use this inside position. I go to mount all the way, except now when I mount, he has an inside elbow position. I can just use this to bump me off mount, to kip, to get into a knee elbow escape, whatever the case might be. So you might be able to get to mount, but first of all, you won't be able to score, and second, you won't be able to stabilize the position, which is eventually what matters. So the best possible situation to mount is a situation in which I have both arms already isolated and I am dominating the inside space relative to the elbow and the inside space relative to the far elbow. So how do we get there? So first of all, you should be playing both elbows in combination, okay? There's no particular order. You should playing them in combination, or you should play them first one and then the other. There's no particular order, but as a general rule, people tend to dominate the far elbow first and then the near side elbow later for a very simple reason, because the far elbow is just the underhook, okay? So if you're coming from a guard pass, let's say very typical here, a very typical guard pass, knee slide, there we are, and I already have my far underhook, okay? So as a general rule, you should probably not passing if you don't have an underhook, because if I go to pass and he has an underhook, he can start coming on top, whatever the case might be, and everything falls apart, okay? So usually you start with having the far arm isolated, and we're here. There are ways to gain this in case you don't have it, but just for now, we start with the far elbow isolated. Very, very important. How do we isolate the near side elbow? Now, this is much trickier. Because side control is a position that is already pretty high on my partner's body. You see, I'm chest to chest, my shoulders on his face. I cannot really go and lift this. This will never work, okay? Sometimes something like this gets shown. This is more of a gi thing. It's not really reliable. He can start bumping me off. Whenever I square, now he gets inside elbow position and he's gone, okay? So it looks like this. I switch here to start lifting the elbow. He starts bumping me here. I will never bring my back to the floor, but now I have to square up, and now he can immediately bring his elbow and his knee back, and everything falls apart. So what I want to do is to walk towards the hips, because when I walk towards the hips, now his elbow is much easier to expose. Okay, so I want to go hip pocket to hip pocket. And at this point, there are a few things that I can do. I can start going and start pinning my partner's arm. Now there is a nice dilemma in place. If he doesn't do anything and if he accepts the pin, the shin pin that we call, now I can start pinning his arm with my shin. This is obviously a very bad position for him. I can still go to mount, but I can go straight into submission. I can switch and start going into Kimura attacks. There are many things that I can do. Obviously, this is not a side control series, so we're not going to go too deep into that. But understand that if he does allow you to pin the arm, that's a pretty bad position for him. Most people will fight this knee. The only way he has to fight the knee is to bring the arm up above. That's it. That's what he's going to do most of the times. He goes. Whenever he brings the arm up and above, now he's giving me the inside knee position relative to his elbow. At this point, I want to be pretty high up. I want to shadow his back with my shin, and I'm basically shelving his head with my knee. Okay, I'm pretty high up here. When he goes to retract the elbow inside my hip, it's a pretty difficult thing to do. Okay, I want to avoid as much as possible using a sort of standard traditional side control, because now I isolated the arm, but as soon as it dislocates the shoulder a little bit, you can bring the elbow back. So as soon as I gain the elbow, I want to come really up here. Okay, at this point, this is pretty tough. Because I'm also so high on his body, when he goes to bridge from here, it's a pretty stable position. Okay, at this point, I want to go to shin mount. So, let's turn that. Yeah, there you go. So I want to start bringing my shin across the body and drive all the way as much as I can. At this point, I want to bring my head on the floor and start flaring his elbow. The more I flare his elbow, the more base I have, and the more I compromise his position. At this point, I bring my knee to the floor. The biggest mistake is to just randomly drift my foot over here so that now he can catch it. This is not the end of the world. It's quarter mount with two arms isolated. Still a pretty good position, but it's not necessarily what we want. We want to go straight to mount. So from here, there are a few things that we can do. If we can bring the elbow high enough, I can just go and step across, shadowing his hips with my foot. So from here, I just step across and I just shadow his hips with my foot, creating this knee-elbow connection. Now I occupy his armpit with my knee, which is what we talked about. And now if you look at how it looks from as soon as I come up, you see now I have double knee position, which is what we talked about in the general concept section. So from here, I bring everything across and now I step. It's option number one. Option number two, from this position, I just go, snap my foot on the floor and regain mount from here. Okay, both are really good options. I personally like to just step into the armpit because it gives me a tighter mount, but you can do whatever you want. Okay, what you want to avoid is just having your foot drifting off so that your partner can catch it. So this is a very basic getting mounted from side control. What about if things start going wrong? So what can start going wrong from this position? Well, there are a few things that can start going wrong. One of them is a situation in which your partner posts with his hand on my hip. At this point, when I walk towards the hips, and for whatever reason, I just cannot gain the inside position with my knee. for whatever reason, he's just posting, he's just being very disciplined with his elbow. There's just nothing I can do, okay? And if I go to mount from here, then he just gets out. A very good solution is now to switch my head onto the near side and come to this position right here. I still walk towards the hips, and now I have the privilege of having a free hand, which I didn't have here, because my hand was working as a cross face. As soon as I physically move his head and post with my head on the floor, now my head is working as a cross face and he's controlling his head and shoulder. Now I have a free hand. There's a few things that I can do. I can do over his elbow, and now I have what we call an over-under. So over on the near side, under to the far side. Or I can go double under, which is obviously the best solution. And now I can start going back to a normal side control. I walk, 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 and I lock my hands into place. But now I have both arms controlled. And now I just go, shin mount, and full mount. And I land straight into a double underhook, which is a supreme control position. So once more, I'm here. I start walking, walking, walking. I want to go into a shin pin, but for whatever reason, my partner is just very disciplined. Physically move the head. I replace it with my head, and now I go either over under or double under. Obviously, double under is far superior because he's in a much more compromised position. I walk, walk, walk. I reestablish my side control, lock my hands, open the elbow, knee head on the floor, shin mount, full mount, and we are already in a double underhook. Amazing control position and amazing position to go into subsequent submissions.